Happy Pride! Yay! You happy for Pride? No. No, she's not. That's the great thing about cats. Cats can never be homophobes because they hate everyone equally. I'll put you down now from this side. Murder me. This isn't straight, is it? Nope. Nothing in my life is. Can you just, yes. Straight. Hello everybody and welcome to my first video on the Woolen Wallflowers channel. Now, I just wanted to say before this video begins that this video is intended to be uplifting and happy and positive, but I was thinking maybe I wouldn't make this video anymore because of the statement that came out from J.K. Rowling, which a lot of people in the trans community took a lot of offence to. And while I'm not in the trans community, I definitely took offence to it too. And I just wanted to say now that this video is not in any way endorsing what was said and trying to bring traction to the same genre that she wrote in. If anything, this video serves as a nice little... There are other fantasy books out there that have some representation. Although J.K. did technically claim that Dumbledore was gay. Where was the gay? Can my computer stop making noises, please? Stop making noise! He implied that trans men are still women because they have periods, and trans women are not valid because they don't have periods, and the name for people with periods is just women, and that is not correct. That is not what we stand for. Anyway, we are here making a video. I have my fuzzy socks on. My background's not gay enough. I just realized, where's the gay? Hang on a sec, we're gonna go get some gay. Have gay flag, singing my song while doing gay scissoring. No. Welcome to Woolen Wallflowers. We are wholesome here, we promise. Are they even that visible on camera? No. Yes. Happy Pride everyone, and I'm very happy to be making the first gay themed video on this channel. Oh dear God, be expecting many, many more from us. This is going to be a happy and a fun video where we can all share books, educate ourselves, and just get really invested in some wholesome romances. So I tried to focus this search on books that have an interesting plotline, have interesting characters, and have interesting writing styles as well, because I wanted the books, while they were inclusive, I also wanted them to be good reads. And I think it's also important that people realise that being gay isn't a plot point, and it's just something that people are and will always be, and that is a-okay, and we welcome you on this lovely Woolen Wallflowers channel. In fact, we want you. Come on in! So, without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to leave timestamps on the screen, so that if you've already read one of these books, or if you don't particularly care for one of them, or if you just want to skip a certain bit, you can. So the first book series is probably a series that quite a few of you, especially if you like fantasy books, will be familiar with. It is the Six of Crows duology. So we have the first book, which is Six of Crows, and Crooked Kingdom, which is the sequel. Now, I do recommend buying these two books together, because I made the fatal mistake of buying Six of Crows, reading it, getting to the end, and then having to wait 2 weeks for Crooked Kingdom to come. This book leaves you on like 6 different cliffhangers where you're like, what is going to happen to these people? And it's so sad because you care about all of them. I also wanted to mention Shadow and Bone, which is the other series. I think this is a trilogy by the same author. And in this book, the main romance is heterosexual, but the author had since put on one of her websites that the third book will be giving more page time and more actual content to queer romances. But that's another duology. I haven't read the third book, so I can't say if that's true or not, but it's also by the same author, so go check it out, Shadow and Bone. So Six of Crows. Six of Crows is basically like if Ocean's 11 was set in a fantasy world. It is about these 6 complete misfit, borderline, well, some of them are, but borderline criminals that have to break in to what's known as the Ice Court, which is like an impenetrable fortress, and abduct this person within in order to sell what they know to this very rich man who will give them a lot of money, and they all really need this money for one reason or another. I was a bit hesitant at first because I was like, 6 main characters, wow, how are you going to give like equal time to all of them? She does it, okay? It's about 500 pages long, so it definitely is longer than it looks when you first hold it, but it is genuinely such a good book because throughout the story you become so attached to the different plot lines and it speaks on so many different things. So there are 3 main couples that the story revolves around, and the gay couple, so it's 2 queer men, one of which I believe is bisexual and one of which I believe is gay. There is actually a 3rd character who is a girl, Nina, who is confirmed to be bisexual, but I'm going to leave that out and just talk about the gay couple because her bisexuality, or pansexuality as some people say it, they are 2 separate things, but I think that they use them sort of interchangeably, and obviously people actually question their sexuality. So one person who identifies as bi may identify as pan the next week, but they didn't really explore it in the first 6 of Crow's book, so I'm just going to be talking about Wylan and Jesper. Jesper, my spirit animal, please marry me. I love him. I obviously, wait, I can marry him. I think he's the bisexual one. Yes, he is the bisexual one. Okay, don't mind me, wedding bells are ringing. So Jesper is my favourite character, hands down. He is funny, he is witty, and I feel like a lot of the time characters fall into the trap of the author tries to make them funny, and in trying to make them funny makes them the dumb character. The same thing goes for the nice character, you know, whenever they're offering some sort of moral substance to the plot, a lot of the time they're either taken as the judgmental one or the stupid one who's really naive. And I think what she does so well in 6 of Crows is she makes all of the characters so well-rounded, and she does that with 6 individuals. And so Jesper is funny, he is witty, he has so much to actually offer the group. He has relationships and he is respected within his community, and that's really lovely because in the place that he lives it's not a nice place and your gang is basically like your family, and he is really respected in the Dregs, which is the gang that they're a part of, and it's nice to see that because a lot of the time sort of the gay kid is cast as like the outcast, the misfit, like the one that nobody likes, and they're just like, they always be themselves throughout all of the turmoil that they face. And I hit myself really hard in the head. Jesper is well respected within his peer group, and later on in the book he does have some conflict with other characters, but that is not based on his personality, that is based by actions that he chose to do. And it's so sad because he has his own mental struggles as well. He has a backstory, and I think him and Wylan really connected through. They were 2 sides of the same coin. So Wylan was the other half of the relationship. He is small bean of the century, just protect, please save him. He is the innocent boy, and he is sort of shrouded in mystery. This isn't straight. He is shrouded in mystery because he comes into Ketterdam, the town, and he comes from a very rich family. So everyone's like, how did this guy get kicked out? What happened? And when I saw Wylan and Jesper start flirting for the first time, I was like, oh, his dad found out that he was gay, and then he kicked him out, yada, yada, yada. And I'm so happy that that was not the case. Obviously, being kicked out is a very big struggle that queer people definitely do face, and I'm not trying to doubt that they do. But it was really nice to take a rest and to see that I just enjoy the fact that there's a world where people don't care if you're gay. Like, I don't know. So ultimately, the character development and the backstory is just as rich. I would say out of the 3 pairings, they are the pairing that we spend the least amount of physical time with, but I don't think that's because she didn't know how to write them or because she didn't want to include them. I think that was purely because of the fact that the leader was one of the people in a heterosexual relationship, and they were the one with the plan, so you kind of had to follow him for the exposition. And as well as that, I think the other two, they had a lot of unresolved conflict, whereas those two had just met for the first time, so their relationship was building slowly, whereas the other two already had a relationship that we had to find out sort of, you know, we had to go back in time and have a lot of flashback scenes. But that didn't make it any less valuable, in my opinion. I think that the romance was just as valuable and it was just as cute, and it was something that I really loved to see. When you buy a copy of the book, it comes with a map that's on the inside. Most fantasy books will do this, but I think this one actually really stayed loyal to, you know, you can see it in the artwork, you can see how much of a cruel, sort of unforgiving world that they do live in, and that was really reflected in the story. Now, for a couple of the bad things, I thought the book was incredibly well paced. There was sort of a lot of moments where even when something mundane was happening, there was a way that, you know, it became interesting. They spiced it up a bit, characters had a heart-to-heart, but I would say that there are some moments in the book that just, I'm gonna go with the phrase, didn't fit. So for example, the first chapter, when I was doing some research for this video, I did come across some reviews for all of the books that I'm going to be talking about, and one person said, do I have to read the trilogy in order to understand what's going on here? Because I read the first couple of chapters and I didn't understand what was going on. I think the reason why this person said this is because the first chapter, in my opinion, was the worst chapter in the entire book. All the first chapter does, it's just this one guy who we never see again, witnessing something really bad happening, and then we flip back to our actual story. So in my opinion, it doesn't make sense because we don't get attached to any of the characters that are in that first chapter. You know, it's not particularly action-packed until the end. It's just sort of him walking about, and we get some backstory about him, and we don't actually need it. So I think if you are going to read the book, definitely do. I would recommend, but the first chapter is just a bit irrelevant. Other gripe I have, the ending. Basically everything from like page 30 to page like 450 is pure gold, and then the ending, that is why you need the second book. I felt a little bit cheated because I was like, I don't think the story's done here, and I don't think this was the right place to end the story, but I understand that if you leave it on that many cliffhangers, people will go out and buy the second book. But it just kind of felt a little bit unsatisfying, but I understand, you know, get your coin, girl, you gotta get to the sequel somehow, so like, I understand. All in all, great book, 9 out of 10, solid read, make sure you buy the sequel. The second book is Sorcery of Thorns, and this book, honestly, really surprised me. So this book isn't necessarily in the list from its amazing inclusion of, you know, multiple gay characters. The main sort of plot point is between a man and a woman. However, this book was actually written by a woman who self-identifies as asexual and aromantic. Asexual is when you don't enjoy sexual relationships of any kind with any gender, and aromantic is when you don't enjoy any romantic relationships of anyone, of any gender. But this book was really good because I think, while it wasn't outright said that there was gay characters in it or asexual characters in it, you could kind of see. So the character Silas, I hope I'm saying that right. It's so difficult because when you're reading things, you're like, I can just pronounce it however I want. And then when you actually have to say it on the internet, where people don't forget things, I'm sorry, okay? Just please don't come for me. I can't read. Margaret Rogerson was very good in the fact that she included the character of Silas, who was definitely asexual, and it was never outwardly said, but if you have any kind of queer knowledge, you could probably guess. I say guess, you could probably make a strong inference that that was the case. And I don't quite know how I feel about that kind of representation, because on the one hand, I'm all for casual queer representation. I heard that term used by somebody who was describing gay representation in TV shows. That is another thing we could do. But the character of Nathaniel is confirmed, online at least, to be bisexual. But the fact that the characters were gay was put in a very casual setting. It wasn't brought up. So like in Six of Crows, there was never a moment where someone went, "You gay?" and somebody else went, "Yeah, I'm gay." The exact dialogue. There wasn't that moment, which on the one hand, I'm very happy about when characters get into homosexual relationships, because it's like, you're normalising it. Because I don't think there was ever a moment in a book where someone went, "You straight?" "Yeah, I'm hella straight." Like, it just doesn't seem the same. And I think in terms of equality, that's very nice. However, I do have a bit of a gripe with some authors that just like to find a character that never got in a relationship and just say, "Yeah, they're gay." Because it's kind of like, did you really plan that, or did you just say that so that you could have all of the straight people read and enjoy your book, and then the gay people couldn't come for you for lack of representation, and that way you just make more money? Not that I'm that negative, I'm not that pessimistic. I think most people have good intentions, but I think it's very obvious when someone does not. So basically, this book revolves around a character. Her name is Elizabeth, and she has trained in this institution since she was very young, and there's a lot of monsters in this world, and she hopes to be one of, I think they're called wardens? I'm right. It is a warden. She hopes to become a warden, who are basically the people in charge of keeping the kingdom safe and making sure nothing happens because of the monsters. However, one day she gets implemented in, basically one of the monsters breaks free. How do I say this without spoilers? Right. Basically, she gets accused of letting one of the monsters out, and she has to basically rely on people who are supposed to be her enemies. So that is a trope that I really like in books, is when people realise that their enemies are actually not that different from them. And I think it does have a lot of nice messages about being able to trust people who are not exactly like you. The witty banter. The characters are so likeable. I feel like I say that about all of them, but who wants to read a book where people are poops? Like, this book is very good in the sense that if you haven't read a lot of fantasy books before, this one is kind of nice at being a good guide to like a lot of the tropes that you would see in a fantasy book, but they're done very well. And I just enjoy the fact that the characters seem to have this sort of, you know, back and forth sort of witty conversation, and everyone in the book is very smart. There is nobody who is just sort of dumb and is used to give the audience information because they don't know anything. It's very easy because there are definitely, you know, 3 or so main characters that you follow, and you get introduced to their stories and how they feel about things, and you become very close and very intimate with the people that you meet in the book, rather than just having a bunch. I would say that's one of my big pet peeves when it comes to book, when there's just too many characters and like they're all seen as really deep and meaningful, and it's like you literally just spent 3 pages saying they're a deep and meaningful character. This book is very good at doing, not saying. We have a map. It is not my favourite map, I must admit. Like, some people don't give 2 shits about the map and they will live no matter what it looks like. But for me, my favourite thing about a book is reading a place that's mentioned and being like, how far have they come? How did they mean to get there? What kind of does this look like? You know, that kind of stuff. Like, call me a nerd, I like the geography of the place. And it is only 1 map. I'm not a big fan of like split maps where it's over like 3 pages and you have to sort of flick back and forth. It is 1 map, but it's a little bit bare bones. I feel like they just kind of went, oh, we need a map to put in the cover because that's what a lot of books do. Yeah. I must admit, like, it's not huge as a world, which is one of the things that I would improve on the book, is maybe expanding the horizons, because a lot of the time it can be self-contained, and the main character ends up travelling from the place where she grew up, and it is kind of a plot point in the book that you know, this is where she grew up, this is what she knows, and she's now being forced into this world where she has no idea what's going on. However, I do think it would be better if they went into more detail about other places that existed and, you know, why they did or didn't and what things are where, because I feel like they don't go into a lot of detail about that. But that's just my opinion. Would recommend. This book is more of an honourable mention than an actual book that I'm going to go into detail about, because the gay bit, the gay character is not one of the main characters, whereas in the other book it was either the main characters are gay, or the author is in the community. But in this, it's kind of, I feel like I'm going to mention it because it's done well and it's not used for cheap drama. Basically, Harper, it handles cerebral palsy, so she has a condition which makes it harder for her to sort of live her day-to-day life, and it goes into detail about that in the book. And she has an older brother. Brother is not one of the main characters in the book. He's definitely there, but he's not at the forefront. But I thought it was just a really nice moment. Basically, she finds this picture of him with somebody else, and she is like, oh, they look very in love. And without spoilers, it's one of those moments where some time is given to the issue, and while, yeah, the whole book does not revolve around gay romance or gay people, it's nice because it represents disabilities, which is probably one of the most underrepresented groups of people in media, because a lot of the time, even if you do have someone with a disability in your form of media, that's what their character is, like just having a disability and how they overcome it, which is what I like about some forms. Like, that's what I liked about Glee. There was a character with a disability and it's very clear that they had one, but that wasn't it. They had like other things, they had storylines, they had relationships, and yes, some conflicts did arise because of their disability, same that happens in this book, but it's a case of, she's a strong character, she basically is in charge of saving the day, and it's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but with a lot more, I'm going to say gravitas, with a lot more gravitas, because the stakes almost seem higher. I know that in Beauty and the Beast they were very high, but here the characters have such genuine struggles that they have to overcome, and if they don't, the consequences are so much worse. So it is a good book. The main storyline is not about queer relationship, but it's great, and it's a good read, and it's a genuinely nice, wholesome moment between two members of a family about being gay. Okay, final book, and probably my favourite in terms of queer representation. Six of Crows is definitely one of my favourite books, don't get me wrong, but I think in terms of the way it handles queer characters, this book is definitely my favourite. It is Girls of Paper and Fire, and I don't know if many of you have heard of it. It's basically a book that surrounds, I don't want to say prostitution, but it's actually the straight people that do the prostitutioning. So basically the plot of this book revolves around a general who has fallen out of favour with the king, so he goes to collect this girl who is apparently very beautiful, because every year the king has 8 girls from all around the country that come to be what's known as a paper girl. And the paper girls are basically his own personal bed servants, if you get my drift. And there's 3 casts in the book. So steel caste, moon caste, and paper caste. Paper castes are human, demon castes is moon caste, because they are the ones with the most power and they have a full form of an animal, whereas the steel castes kind of have in between. They have a bit of animal power, but they are still mostly human. So the Bull King chooses these 8 girls, and usually there's a selection process, but for this year she has been granted special entry in order for him to win back his favour. And so she is taken from her family and she never sees them again. She is taken from them like her mother was 6 years prior, because the king is paranoid, he is a mess. I could argue that there's definitely some mental illness written into the book, because he is ordering raids and he is trying to get rid of this thing called the sickness that is plaguing the land. No spoilers here. So they basically have to undergo this training in the palace where they are taught how to be a lady, how to be a good bed mate, and basically how to impress him. And Lee, who is our main character, doesn't want this life. Some of the other girls, they find it a great honour. They're like, I have been chosen by the heteros. No. They're like, I have been chosen by the king. I am amazing. Either way, it does not sound great. These people are brainwashed. But basically, she doesn't want this life, and she ends up rebelling in ways that a lot of people don't like. And the person who she falls in love with, mild spoiler, sorry, it doesn't actually start happening until like page 100. Even then, it takes a while for the romance to get going, but we do love a good slow burn romance. So the character she falls in love with is called Ren, and Ren has a lot of backstory, but I can't go into it because that's massive spoilers for the entire book. Ren and her fall in love, and I love it because lesbians, not just like lesbians because it's like all relatable, but it's like there is so little queer representation for asexuals, trans people, and I would argue lesbians, because I feel like a lot of the time they just throw a gay man in and it's like, oh, we need a gay character, here's an effeminate guy, gay man, because I feel like a lot of the time lesbians can be more straight passing and they don't want to deal with diving into character development to get to the point of their sexuality. But I think it's great because these two lesbians, they're not stereotypes, they are well-developed characters, they have reasons for loving each other. I wish we did get to spend some more, we do get a couple, but like some more intimate moments with them, just so it would be more normalised to have sort of queer intimacy in books. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion though. I will say their romance is so touching and it's so... It's weird because it's the way you would see a straight romance portrayed. A heterosexual romance would be portrayed in the same way, that slow burn, that build up, those intimate moments. And it's just so normalised but so wholesome. It's not seen as something perverted, it's seen as something really pure. And they mention how pure and easy and natural it is throughout the book, and I love that. And I think... my heart, I can't. So the second thing I really like about the book is the depth of the characters. There are so many characters who are kind of framed to be the bad guy, but aren't really. Even the king, who is seen as like the main antagonist of the entire story, there are points where he says genuinely nice things. But there are other points where he does completely unforgivable things. He has people fall in love with him. There's another character that we meet who is honestly seen as the sweetest little bean and is amazing. We love her. But it turns out that she's fallen in love with a horrible person. And she has these really horrible views that she expresses in the form of love, which is so strange because it's more true to real life where it's not wrong or right, or people aren't just going to be outwardly super evil. Like, people don't just go, hello there, I am evil, you suck, I hate everything about you. That's me being evil right there. They frame it as like, this is what we have to do, this is, you should be grateful for what we're giving you. And it's very strange because you kind of not see where they're coming from, but you could see why they would think that. And so I think the story is definitely very good at saying these things are still wrong no matter how you frame them. And the ending of the book, I have a love-hate relationship with it. At the same time, it opens up more room to expand the, you know, the universe the book is set in. But on the other hand, it's like, no, we needed like an ending. We needed a payoff. And I don't think we got payoff that we wanted. I think that is one of the worst things that happens in books, is that in order to subvert expectations, which has become a really big trend at the moment, people have just started doing really stupid things, and people have started surviving impossible circumstances, and things happen that just don't make sense. And I feel like that kind of happened here, and it's a shame because I really loved the book. I think in terms of character, the book was amazing. Had so many amazing characters. Even the people who you didn't like, who were mean characters, had so much backstory. There's this character called Blue who you're meant to really hate, and then you find out some really tragic things, and you really feel for her. There's another character who ends up doing something kind of bad, and they were never particularly likable, but the punishment that they get for it is so traumatizing that you feel so horrible, because you think, well, who would be nice if they'd been thrust into this situation? And you start to learn that just because people say and do things out of duty doesn't mean that they mean it. And I think it definitely has the message that you need to wait and try and understand people before you make judgments, because nothing is ever quite as it seems. And I love that about the book. Slight note, pacing. There were some moments that were a bit slow. There are some that got a bit repetitive, but I feel like that could have been a structural choice. It could have been a design choice to sort of show the repetitive nature of what they're doing and how they're expected to be, you know, polite, refined women that do the same thing and study diligently so that they can impress a man. And I do agree with that. I would love to have more scenes that revolve around magic, because I feel like the things that made it a bit slow were just... I love domestic things, don't get me wrong, I'm domestic as heck. I love interior design and decorating and all that kind of stuff, but I definitely think domestic is not where this writer thrives. And I think the magic system, everything that was explained, phenomenal, so deep, so enchanting, so amazing to read. And I think I really want there to be a sequel. Is there a sequel on the way? Let me check. Crap, guys, the sequel's already out. Okay, that's something for me to buy after this video has ended. Yes. Okay, so there is a sequel out, which is good, because it means that the story is not over, and hopefully, fingers crossed, there will be some room to explore all of the questions that I have. It is definitely a great read, not just in terms of queerness, in terms of an interesting story, lovable characters, and a real message. So that's all I have for this video. It was very nice to meet you. Hello, my name is Emily, or Em, depending on how long you've got. Yeah, you don't have that long for 2 syllables. And I was really glad that this could be my first video, because I love love, and I love talking about books and romance and gay. We still have the flags, they're still here, they're hanging out, we can keep them. Please consider clicking subscribe and watching some of our other videos. You'll be seeing more from us soon, hopefully. I don't know why I'm getting nervous now. It's like, this is actually a video I've made. But thank you so much for watching and for sticking through to the end. If you want to buy any of those books, I'll try and leave links in the description. And just know that we love you, we welcome you, and we hope that we can all geek out together. Thank you.